Gentleman yields back. Pursuant to the markup notice, it is now in order to consider H.R. 6251 to amend the Marine Mammal Protection Act of 1972 to allow importation of polar bear trophies taken in sport hunts in Canada before the date the polar bear was determined to be a threatened species under the Endangered Species Act of 1973. Ask unanimous consent that the Subcommittee on Water, Wildlife, and Fisheries be discharged from further consideration of the bill. Without objection, so ordered. Without objection, the bill will be considered as read and open to amendment at any point. Does any member wish to be recognized for purposes of debate on the bill? Mr. Downing.
Thank you, Chairman Westerman. H.R. 726, the Crow Tribe Water Rights Settlement Amendments Act, provides crucial adjustments to the Crow Tribe of Montana's water settlement to ensure.
Downing,
excuse me.
We're on the polar bear bill.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I know you're excited about the water rights settlement. We'll get to it here.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Here shortly. Mr. Crank, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate being recognized, and I appreciate Mr. Begich for bringing this bill forward. Look, this bill releases polar bears that were legally hunted in Canada to hunters in the United States. And the 2008 listing of polar bears under the ESA meant that under MMPA, importation of them was illegal. The hunters who hunted these polar bears, they complied with every law and every regulation that existed at the time of the hunt. Polar bears were harvested from populations that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service had already approved as scientifically managed and sustainably harvested. The rule change, while imports permit were still pending. So the permits were still pending when they changed the rules. H.R. 6251 does not reopen polar bear imports. It doesn't weaken ESA protections. It applies only to a limited number of hunters who legally harvested bears before the 2008 ESA listing and had pending permit applications. It also reinforces that wildlife management should be based on science and sound population management, not on fear. It upholds confidence in the regulatory process by avoiding retroactive changes to legally conducted activities. And regulated hunting supports conservation by providing funding and creating incentives to maintain healthy wildlife populations and habitat. Retroactively changing the rules creates uncertainty for sportsmen who invest significant time, significant money to comply with wildlife laws. These bears weren't poached. They were legally taken by as bears that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service said were sustainable and manageable. Fairness matters. Individuals who followed the law shouldn't be penalized because the law changed after the fact. And it's just that simple. And I would say this lastly. This bill supports international conservation. As a hunter, if I know I can spend years planning a hunt, investing thousands of dollars, complying with every law and every regulation, and still have the government change the rules after the fact, I'm going to think twice before making that investment. Other hunters will do the same. I'm a hunter myself, have no desire to hunt a polar bear, never will do that, but we ought to stand up for conservation, and hunting plays a very valuable role in conservation. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Is there further discussion? Mr. Huffman, you're recognized.
You just have to shake your head when this is what you prioritize. This is what you care about, helping some pampered elites display the prize that they killed on a trophy hunt. Americans across this country are struggling with high costs of gas, food, and health care. The majority chooses to spend this committee's time on giveaway after giveaway for special interests, in this case, the president's wealthy donors and Don Jr.'s Safari Club buddies. This bill, H.R. 6251, puts a for sale sign on the Marine Mammal Protection Act by selling it out to a few wealthy international trophy hunters. It allows these folks to import decades-old polar bear trophies into the United States, undermining hard-fought protections for threatened marine mammals and setting a dangerous precedent for future environmental protection rollbacks. The polar bear is protected under both the MMPA and the Endangered Species Act. Prior to its 2008 listing, the Department of Interior permitted imports of polar bear trophies from Canada, provided the hunts were legal. However, listing the polar bear as threatened under the ESA automatically classified it as depleted under the MMPA, which legally halted all trophy imports. That's how the system works. When Congress drafted the ESA and the MMPA, it wisely intended for them to work in tandem to save our most imperiled wildlife. An ESA listing automatically triggers depleted status under the MMPA, aligning both laws to shield threatened species and their habitat from harm. At the time of the listing, roughly 40 hunters left their polar bear trophies sitting in Canadian freezers. The trophy hunting community was well aware that an ESA listing was imminent and that it would immediately ban imports. These individuals knew the risks. They chose to hunt anyway. Even though these 40 polar bears have been dead for years, forcing Congress to retroactively waive a core provision of the MMPA sets a terrible precedent. It chips away the bedrock conservation laws designed to prevent extinction and to recover species. And we say, and we're being told that this is about conservation. Congress should not be in the business of carving out loopholes for special interests, but this is not the only wildlife policy this Republican majority seems interested in pursuing. We have yet to see a single ESA or MMPA bill from the majority that actually improves conservation outcomes. We must allow state and federal wildlife managers to do their jobs based on the best available science, exactly as the Endangered Species Act was intended to work. It's time to start treating our wildlife like the national treasure it is. Let's reject these special interest loopholes for the elite and get back to the real world of the real work of delivering a safer, more affordable America for our constituents. I urge my colleagues to vote no and yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Is there further discussion on the issue? Mr. Beggett, you're recognized.
Look, at the end of the day, this is a common sense bill. Unfortunately, MMPA does not require, or rather permit, the same flexibility that was available under the African lion in 2015. This requires literally an act of Congress to make things whole for hunters who follow the law. And look, these hunts were sanctioned by the Canadian government. They were within traditional Inuit hunting regions. They were guided hunts by indigenous peoples in Canada. And again, these folks followed the law. They went about going through this process with the full understanding and belief that they would have the ability to return these pelts back to the United States, as had been the case for many years. I urge my colleagues to support this common sense legislation, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Is there further discussion? I recognize myself, and I strongly support Mr. Beggich's bill, H.R. 6251, to allow for the importation of polar bear trophies that were lawfully taken in Canada prior to the polar bears listing under the ESA in 2008. Now, I had a chance to celebrate our 250th anniversary and the 4th of July here in D.C., and it was an amazing time to be in Washington, D.C. The festivities, the fireworks show, the concert on the mall, it was all, I think it was more than I even hoped that it would be, and I've talked to many people who visited here who were very happy and patriotic about the opportunity to celebrate our country's 250th birthday. And we're still in that celebration time. And I think as we look at what we're celebrating, we have to think about not only the Declaration of Independence, but also the Constitution, which tells us the very purpose of government is to establish justice. And I think it's important, whatever the issue is, that we work hard for justice. And this is an issue about justice. These are people who, whether you like hunting or not, whether you don't think that's important to conservation, you should at least look at the facts here and realize that these people followed the law. These polar bears are dead. They're in a freezer in Canada. And I think it's kind of crazy that we're having to even take up this bill in Congress, that the bureaucracy is so warped in our federal government that Congress has to pass a law to allow people to import polar bears that were legally taken. There was nothing illegal done when these polar bears were taken. And that's our job, to establish justice. So I think that's what we're here doing today. We're establishing justice for people whose justice and freedom was taken away by the actions of an overzealous federal government. Again, keeping these trophies in Canada does nothing to bring the bears back to life. And there's no conservation benefit otherwise to preventing their importation into the United States. Now, additionally, under the Marine Mammal Protection Act, every import permit includes a $1,000 fee directed into the Polar Bear Conservation Fund. The choice before us is simple. We can keep these polar bear trophies stuck in Canada where they provide no conservation value, or we can allow them to be imported into the United States and invest in polar bear conservation. I appreciate Mr. Beggich's work on this long-standing disparity for American sportsmen and women who follow the law and are asking only for fairness and justice. I know this is an issue that your predecessor, Representative Young, worked on as well, and he was very passionate about it. We can support these hunters. We can support polar bear conservation by passing H.R. 6251 today. I support this common sense bill, and I yield back. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, it is now in order to consider amendments to H.R. 6251. We will now consider the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 6251 offered by the gentleman from Alaska, Mr. Begich, designated Begich 168 ANS. Without objection, the amendment is considered read and open to amendment at any point. Mr. Begich, you're recognized.
The ANS is a very simple title change to the bill. Nothing else has changed since introduction. I echo the chairman's comments just now. At the end of the day, this is common sense legislation. It's required under the MMPA for Congress to literally act for what equates to about 40 pelts. We're not talking about hundreds of pelts. We're not talking about changing the law going forward. We're talking about making sure that we have justice for the people who went about following the law. And I urge my colleagues to support this legislation. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Is there further discussion on the amendment? Also support the amendment, and I urge, and if there's no further discussion on the amendment, it's now in order to consider amendments to the ANS to H.R. 6251. No amendments to the ANS have been filed. Are there any further amendments? Seeing none, the question now occurs on the amendment in nature of a substitute to H.R. 6251 offered by the gentleman from Alaska, Mr. Begich, designated Begich 168 ANS. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no.
No.
In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment in the nature of a substitute is adopted. The question now occurs on reporting H.R. 6251 as amended to the House with the recommendation that the bill be favorably approved. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no.
No.
In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it.
Mr. Chair.
Let's finish this.
So you're not requesting a report. Okay. The bill as amended is ordered reported to the House with the recommendation that it be favorably approved. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Mr. Huffman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I give notice of my intention to file supplemental additional dissenting or minority views on the measure just considered and ask unanimous consent that this notice be extended to all measures considered at the markup under House Rule 11, Clause 2L. The notice extends to all members.
Without objection, so ordered.